So the main problem is that, and I extensively talk about this in my book. I believe that it's one of the most interesting part. The problem was that I was following pattern. This very same feature was used by a pilot to actually commit suicide and crash a plane. Then it locked the cabin from the inside and he crashed the plane with all the people. The secret sauce of the hacker mindset is to
Welcome again to the Hackers Empire podcast. I'm your host Nilesh, and our guest in today's episode is Francesco Carlucci, the author of the book The Hacker Mindset. Francesco has been a developer for more than 10 years, but when he was trying to hack into applications, he was not able to do it, despite of having the technical knowledge, because there was a missing piece, and that missing piece is the hacker mindset. Let's hear it from Francisco himself, and let's really understand how you can build a hacker mindset. Enjoy. Yeah. So, Francesco, people who are in security at some point of time in their careers, they do realize the fact that it's not so much about the technical side of the things, although they are important, but it's more about the hacker mindset. So, can you tell me about the moment or the time when you discovered that the mindset is more important for yourself?
Sure, sure. So the story goes like this. So when I started, like, I cannot say I'm a hacker for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Like, I believe that if you have that skill inside, you are an hacker for maybe your whole life. But the particular thing about my story, it was that I became a professional software developer many years before
Hmm.
hacking professionally. So I'm writing code for more or less 15 years professionally. I'm proficient in many programming languages. And when I decided to try to become a hacker, I made this evaluation mistake thinking that the fact that I was a developer would make the process easier. Like, it was easy for me to switch to a hacking career. That was not true, because actually, when I tried to go hands-on in hacking, do some bug bounty, or do some penetration testing, things were not working out. So the fact that I was very skilled, I was a coder, I was already developing complex system, it wasn't allowing me to hack things. And that was the moment that I realized that probably, like, the hacker skills doesn't live in the technical, like, side of the spectrum. That was maybe
Hmm.
something else missing, and that was the hacker mindset.
So you have seen both worlds. You have been a developer, but when you tried to hack into web applications, you sort of know how these web applications work, but still you
Yeah.
were not, able to get into these systems. What problems were you facing? Like, because you know these systems in and out, you have been a developer for more than 10 years. What exactly were you? What was the problem that you were facing when trying to get into these systems?
So the main problem is that, and I extensively talk about this in my book. I believe that it's one of the most interesting part. The problem was that I was following patterns. So maybe I was thinking, I was testing for cross-site scripting, and I was just like learning why cross-site scripting happens, getting payloads, composing payloads, and, or sometimes, let's say it, copy pasting payloads into fields and see if things work out. And that's not the way to proceed, because as long as you are following predefined patterns, like, in my opinion, you are not hacking. You start hacking in the very moment in which you decide to go off the path, to test something else, to try to look and some part of the application which is maybe like smaller or a more in the shadow, where maybe no one else has looked before, and you start developing your routine, your own approach to a web application.
Mm-hmm. So the approach is very different than a programmer. When you're hacking into an application, the approach is very different, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because, like, sometimes as a programmer, like, your focus is on the outcome. So you are probably are working for a
Mm.
company or for a customer if you're a freelancer, and your goal is to get stuff done. Sometimes to get stuff done quickly, like to optimize, to maximize your income and your time, and to achieve a working outcome. Security is not always a priority for programmers, but when you are a hacker, like your goal is to discover security faults within the application, or just more generally speaking, make the application safe. And you have a completely different vision. You focus more on the flows, on how the data travels across the stack. If there are, like nowadays, data are one of the most valuable assets on the web, and you start realizing that data go to a lot of different places. They start from the client, they go through some proxies, some servers, some cache layers, and you start considering all
Mm.
these stuffs, and you start realizing and picturing out potential new attacks. And this also happens because most of the times you go against an infrastructure that does not come from a single person. So, for example, the developer can take care of the application part. Then there is someone taking care of the network that works on another whole different layer. So there are more people putting together something, and often where more people works together there are gaps, because like the communication is not perfect and the knowledge is not perfect. So sometimes attacks do happen because there are differences between the approach and the work of more people on the other side.
Yeah, the more people are involved, the more gaps exist because everyone think in a different way. Speaking of thinking in a different way, you have wrote the book The Hacker Mindset. So tell me what the hacker mindset is.
Well, it's difficult defining the hacker mindset. One of the terms that I always associate with the hacker mindset is non-linear learning, because most of the times when you try to approach a problem, when you try to approach even the study or the learning of something, you often go step by step. So I need to do this, and to do this thing I need A, B, C, a series of things. Like the hacker mindset, if you wanna like picture it in some way that people can visualize, it's more about randomness. You start from something, then you get attracted by something else, and you move to another topic, and you just keep going, and then sometimes things, concepts click in your mind, and you are able to reconstruct this concept, these ins together, to create something
Mm.
new, something different. I don't know if this makes the idea. So the secret sauce of the hacker mindset is to try to go beyond the classical pattern, beyond the known, and just let things flow in your mind without boundaries. So don't set yourself boundaries. Feel free to test things, to play around with parameters, to even to try some nonsense stuff that sometimes like work out. I have like practical examples that really edge scenarios that were not supposed to work, but they actually did work. So that's the Akram mindset for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you have practical examples that actually gives the essence of the hacker mindset. So what were those practical examples or the things that you did that were not supposed to work but actually did work?
Yeah, well, maybe a very insightful attack that,
Mm-hmm.
like, in my opinion, was not supposed to work, but it did work. Was the single HTTP call denial of service. So just to be very clear, because I don't like buzzwords, and I like really like. Unfortunately, the hacking word is made of these technical terms, but I like to be very clear. So the way the people communicate across the internet is to sending each other HTTP call. It's like data traveling from one machine to another. And the denial of service is when you basically you make another machine to crash. So you send some data or too many data in some cases that the machine is overloaded and stops working. So there were cases, especially with CDNs, where a single request with a huge parameter make the other machine to crash. And this was uncommon because
Mm.
historically the denial of service, it was like the attacker sends too many requests to the target, and then the target is overloading and stops working. But in this case, in this attack, with one single request, with one single parameter that was too big, too huge, the machine trying to process that parameter, it went in a kind of infinite loop and crashed. And it was most probably discovered with some fuzzing, with some random test, and it was not supposed to work because, like, ideally, if a parameter is too big, to maybe the target could cut it or could refuse to process it. But in this case, it was trying to process it, and it was like killing, consuming all its resources. So this is
Mm.
a good example about like just trying to set a parameter to a size, to a dimension that you are not supposed, that it will not happen in a regular user flow. But as an attacker, you can go try that and see what happens on the other side. And the most important thing is that if you see that something weird is happening, you need to be curious and you need to investigate why, because if you don't investigate why, you just stop at the highest layer of the chain. So you see that something happens, you have discovered something, okay, cool. But if you go deeper and you try to investigate why, the why, you end up learning what happens on the other side, and then that knowledge, it comes
Mm.
useful to keep researching, keep hacking, to declining that kind of the finding to maybe some new attacks or chain attacks together and so on.
Ideally, there should be, there are validations around, how much data you can send.
This was like expected because of course the web server is
Mm.
sometimes supposed to have some form of protection, but testing different chunks, different size of string of characters, I was able to find the sweet spot. So not too small to be just process it fine, not too big to be stopped, but the right size to make the attack succeed. And even if like the denial of service attack, I often spoke about this in my book, is it's a so old technique that sometimes companies are well protected, but they tend to be protected from, as I said, huge amount of traffic, big amount of requests altogether. But if you are able to crash an application with only one request, that's something that companies want to know about and want to protect about. Because if, for example, we are talking about an e-commerce website that makes money every minute, there are all orders
Mm.
flowing in. If there is a single actor that can destroy the operation with a single request, they definitely want to know about that and fix that. Makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, DDoS attacks, anyone can do DDoS these days. Even kids sitting in a basement can do DDoS attacks. They have those kind of tools. So non-linear thinking and curiosity. So, do you think curiosity plus non-linear thinking is sort of the base of the hacker mindset?
Yes, yes, you absolutely got it right. Sometimes I get lost talking about technical attacks, but like the most important things about this whole talk is curiosity plus nonlinear thinking. Because as I said, sometimes you get started, you test someone else payload, you copy paste payload, you see that don't work, and you get like discouraged, you give up. But when you see that sometimes in the application just catch your interest, you start researching it, you start poking around it, so with parameters, with fuzzing, with with playing with different encoding with special characters. You start really getting going deeper into how is it possible, and that curiosity that moves you to this investigation, that's your fuel. You are not doing it to make that an attack from someone else's work. You are doing it because you are really keen to understand what's going on there, and you dig so deeper that then most of the times, in my experience, you end up find something valuable, because that's your motivation. You are researching and you are learning while you do this stuff.
So you are breaking the pattern. I remember a story from your book, by the way, when you are thinking in patterns and you are thinking in sort of a tunnel vision. Do you remember the story from your book, the airplane story?
Yeah, that's a very strong story. Of course, it doesn't come from me. It's unfortunately it's a real fact, but I believe that it's very meaningful because the whole story comes from the accident, from the 9/11 plane crash against the twin towers that probably we all know about. So from that moment, rule makers, decision makers decided that they wanted to make the planes safer, to not allow any bad person from the equipage to break into the control cabin and take control of the plane. So apparently the most obvious thing to do, it was to make the control cabin lockable, so to make it possible to lock it from the inside, so in a very strong way, so no one from the outside could get into the control cabin. And this was supposed to make to be a safety feature. This was supposed to make the plane safer. And like, I don't know much about plane security, but if this was implemented in almost all the airplane around the world, I suppose that this rule has passed through many hands, many minds, many people. And some years later, a few years later, I believe 5 or 10 years later, this very same feature was used by a pilot to actually commit suicide and crash a plane. So he waited until his co-pilot went outside the cabin, then it locked the cabin from the inside, and he crashed the plane with all the people, like making all the people on that plane die.
Okay, so when the co-pilot left the cockpit, he just crashed the airplane because it was a
Yes, yes.
suicide. Like, I mean, but he took all
Yeah, it was a
he
suicide
took
and
all the
made all the
passengers
people,
with him.
yeah, all the passengers to die. And like the co-pilot realized it, that everyone realized it, that the plane was going down dangerously, but no one could stop it because of that safety feature from the previous accident. The cabin was locked from the inside, and it was impossible to access it from the outside of the cabin. So this is a very meaningful example when, like, you are sure you are doing something good, something safe, something well architected, but actually that very same feature, it can be used against your willing to create harm. And this was a meaningful example because it cost lives.
It caused unseen, yeah, it caused an unseen problem. I mean, no one was thinking about it. They were thinking about the problem, I mean, that happened earlier, but in the process of solving one problem, they created another problem. I mean, yeah, that exactly sums up why you should not be thinking in a tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Good example. I'm really happy that you gave that example. So, Francesco, we have been talking about the mindset. We have been talking about non-linear thinking, curiosity. Those are sort of the building blocks of the hacker mindset. So, how do you train your mind, or how do you sort of develop your hacker brain? Because it's easy to say that you need curiosity, or you need to think in a non-linear fashion. But what are some of the practical steps we can take to sort of acquire that skill set of a hacker brain?
Yeah, good question. So this is a very good question because sometimes when you have a way, a tested way to learn something, in some way you are following a pattern. And in this case, we are learning to not follow a pattern. So having a way to do that, it's like a contradiction, at its root. So it's a very good question. So I have my way. I'm not sure if this way can work for everybody, but I'm happy to open source my process that I call like
Secret, huh?
the yeah it's the reverse the reverse learning, the reverse method. So when I wanna, like, I have foundation, of course. I know how the HTTP works, how the network works, the packets, like the very basic of, I know about programming, as I said. When I want to approach something new, a new topic, I go the opposite way. I go right into the code. I go directly hands on. So I try to do stuff without knowledge. And this way, I do things my way. Probably is not the best way, but like I try to figure out things without having read or watched videos or learned from someone else. Because if I learn from someone else, then I just inherit someone else's approach, and that creates the tunnel vision. So I just go right into the thing, hands on, no learning, no nothing. When I get stuck, because of course I get stuck, I'm not kind of a genius that just do anything at first shot. I do get stuck, and when I get stuck, I go to do some research. I do enough research to learn to overcome that step, and then I go ahead with zero. I call this zero knowledge approach. So that's my way. Instead of learning stuff and then doing stuff, I right away I do stuff and then I go learn the missing pieces.
So you're approaching it from a beginner's mind that you know nothing about the target.
Yes, exactly. The beginner's mind. Exactly. The kid's
That's
mind.
that's actually a nice way to, yeah, and that's actually a nice way to think about it, because yeah, people who know too much, they often fail to approach any anything from a beginner's mind. And you even mention it in your book that even experts should approach things from a beginner's mind, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was more of a, that answer was more for people who are in security, who are in technology, right? But I believe that the hacker mindset is more than technology. I mean, even if you are not in technology, still you can apply the principles of the hacker mindset. So, do you have any advice for someone who is not in security to sort of hack their way in to something, or not necessarily a web application or a system, but let's say to get a promotion, for example?
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, I gotta say that I believe that once you develop the hacker mindset, or you start developing it, because like it's a life learning process. You, as I said, you are never arrived, you are never done with this thing. Like it just comes natural to find creative solutions to problems, even if they are not technical problems, of course. And yeah, my advice can be like to just I know we come back to the pattern, but that's really the culprit of the concept. So don't go just step by step toward your solution. We are talking about getting a promotion. Try to focus on your final goal, and then try to move laterally instead of going ahead. And to moving laterally, maybe you start seeing different things from another perspective, and that perspective can inspire you, because inspiration is also important. Like, this is a topic that has been discussed by artists and philosophers before hackers, but getting inspiration is really something that can motivate us. And like, where do we find good inspiration? I believe, as an hacker, I believe that inspiration doesn't come from inside our computer. Like, if you are just looking at your monitor, at your screen the whole day, very hard to get inspiration. Inspiration comes from nature. So, as cliche as it may sound, go for a walk, try to empty your mind. This is another very interesting concept that also comes from the Oriental philosophy. When your mind is full of thoughts, of ideas, of stress, whatever, there is no space from something new to come in. So if you want to see things from another approach and try to hack a process, hack a real life event, try to make space in your mind. And how do we make space in your mind? By relaxing, by having a walk, by making some gigs, some hobbies that make us more, in a state of tranquility, to make us ready to embrace new ideas. So to sum this up, first of all, you need to realize, you need to be aware that there are other ways, because sometimes you are too focused on the known way to get a promotion, that you don't even realize, even think that there are other ways. But when you just become aware of this, you're you start like paying attention to hints. And where do we get these hints? By taking a step back, moving laterally, and observe our friends, the colleagues, the nature. uh, yeah, I don't know if this makes sense. It may sound a little bit, idealistic, but I believe that that's really.
No, it makes a lot of sense, man. It makes a lot of sense to sort of, I mean, the first thing that you mentioned is to figure out there are other steps, there are other ways to do something. So I mean, it makes sense to me because when I started my career in security, I do DevOps, by the way. So even I started as a marketing intern. I didn't start in technology, and I don't have a college degree. So even my path was very different from what usually people in tech are used to. So I have worked for security startups most of my life, and now since you are mentioning all those things, now I'm sort of connecting the dots that unknowingly I was sort of following the hacker mindset, which is not following the pattern, being curious about things. I mean, I'm self-learned, so even I was curious about things. I didn't follow the pattern. I was curious, and what else did you talk about? Non-linear path. I learned about a lot of things: marketing, security, cloud, AWS, DevOps, and it was
You
a very
moved
non-linear path.
horizontally, not laterally, as I said.
Yeah, exactly. Moved
Yeah,
horizontally. Yeah. Now,
yeah.
since you mentioned it, it all comes back. Now it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So,
I have a nice
yeah,
stories
you.
about this. If you want to hear about that.
Yeah, go ahead. We love
Yeah,
stories. I love
this is
stories.
also in my book, because I have to say, like, all the most interesting stories are are in my book, and it comes from the moment then a company asked me to do marketing at their stand for a conference. So I was a speaker at this conference. I was there in Serbia to talk about security, of course, and more specifically security by design. And that was this company that was asking me, hey, as you are there already, so you are attending the conference, would you mind if we set up a stand, we send you promo materials, and you advertise us, you talk about our software and so on. And like my answer was yes. And this was already like part of the hacker mindset, because you are there as a speaker. It's not something you see every day. As a speaker also does the marketing at the stand, because it's you are there to talk and maybe to hang out with the other attendees. And so it's uncommon, but I said yes because I never did that before. And I always say yes to first, like, to new opportunities. And on the day of the conference, I was supposed to receive all the marketing materials, the swag, the t-shirts, the the banners to advertise these companies. And nothing arrived, because apparently the postal services was not that reliable. And basically I was there
Hmm.
with nothing. So I called the company. They were supposed to pay me for that. So I feel like a little bit guilty, and I wanted to provide, to deliver what I was supposed to deliver. And I called the company and say, hey, I have nothing here. I really don't know how I can help you with advertising, with nothing, because there are other stands and everyone has cool stuff. They are giving out pens and keychains and all the nice stuff that you get at the conference. And they just told me, "Don't worry, just do your best, and we will get you paid anyway." So I say, okay, what I can do now? And like the idea was that I just put some piece of papers together, like literally with some glue. I made a 1 meter banner and I wrote by hand, "I'm sorry, we don't have swag, we don't have nothing to offer, but we have a very cool software here, and I'm happy to sit with you and showcase the software." And I set up this banner in front of my empty stand, and my empty stand was standing out because all the other stands were full of stuff, and mine was so poor and so like minimalistic that people get curious about this and was like empathizing with me that I was alone with nothing. And a lot of people came and they started sitting with me and hanging out with me. I wanted to learn about the software, and my promo went so well. And I believe this is a real life example about just thinking to something weird and uncommon and really strange that was nothing to be found on conference can actually work out.
Exactly. I mean, you had nothing. You didn't have marketing material. All you had was your mindset, and
Yes.
that was actually the secret sauce. So people paid attention, man. That-
Yeah, because they were reading my copy and smiling at me. And the moment they smile, we do eye contact, then you are welcome to engage with me. And on the other stand, sometimes you just go there. Can I get a shirt? Can I get a pen? You get a pen, thank you, and you go away. But in my case, that was nothing to get, and that way, like the relationship between people was happening.
Is this in your book?
It is. It is.
Oh, sorry about that. I forgot. I will give another read to the book.
Okay, it's fine.
Anyway,
It's fine.
so but it really sums up the mindset that you are talking about. So, Francesco, you mentioned about inspiration too. Like when you need some inspiration, you go for a walk, and what keeps you going though? Because security hacking, it's the world is changing very fast. What keeps you moving? See, it's very difficult to stay updated. New attacks are coming, and new people are entering the market. New EDRs and new softwares are coming into the market. So how do you keep yourself motivated to sort of keep going at it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So it's I need to be a little bit introspective now because you know it's true that I have this passion toward technology, and when some technology comes out, for some reason, I'm really like keen to poke with it, to learn, and to explore new stuff. So it's something like built in. But it's also true that one thing that motivates me to keep going in security is the relationship with other fellow hackers and developers, and see how like exchanging this information can refresh my mind and keep me seeing the world and the things that I know in new ways all the time. It's like a rebirth. You know something, then you confront yourself with other people about that very same topic, and some new scenario, some new approach makes you see the topic in a whole different way. And this is like bringing new life, bringing fresh energy into the game, and that's what really keeps me going. It's not about just learning and keep the knowledge for yourself. It's about sharing, and by sharing, it's starting the process of mutual growth.
Definitely, man. The community does help. I mean, I got your contact from Reddit. I was part of this community, and I saw your post about the hacker mindset, and that's how I got to know you. And I am glad that I was part of the community, because what you just said really gave me good insight into what the mindset thing you are talking about. And So I mean, money is not a motivation, right? You also talk about that.
Yeah, well, I try to not stress things out about money because, like, I tried that. Like everyone in his career has focused on money at some point, but that was the moment that things stopped to work out, and that's why I also do not recommend people that want to get started in hacking to start with bug bounty, because in my opinion bug bounty is one of
Hmm.
the hardest way to make money. It's a good way, yeah, like you can make very good things with bug bounty. It can be also motivating, but when you get started, especially if you pick a target that a lot of people already like hacked onto, it's very likely that you are not gonna find anything, or if you find something, that's a dupe, and that's a problem. So if you do things only for the money, it can become stressful because you are not end up making money anytime soon, because everything takes effort, takes knowledge, takes experience. Like if you do things out of passion, money will follow. At least for me it was like that. Like when I
Hmm.
started to send vulnerability reports to companies, I would never like expect to be paid. But at some point, companies started telling me, hey, thank you for the report. Would you like to review the whole system? Would you like to perform a whole penetration testing? Would you like to help our team with security? And of course, they're going to pay me for that. But like if you approach right away, hey, this is the problem and this is the bill, that's not going to work out. And it's not fulfilling for you.
Yeah, even I'm not a big fan of bug bounties. One of the reasons is because how these bug bounty companies are marketing it, because they're marketing it in a sense that you can make a lot of money doing bug bounties, and it actually deviates your mind from the actual purpose, which is to learn from. I mean, you have these awesome targets, live systems, live targets, and you can do pen testing on these live systems through bug bounty programs. So, but if you go with a mindset to make money, that's how these bug bounty companies are marketing themselves, that you are going to make money. But if you go with that approach, you are focused on the wrong thing. What you should be really focused on is you can learn a lot of things from bug bounty targets, because those are live systems, and yeah.
Yeah, of course. If you are chasing money and you figure out that some attack is not likely gonna work, you probably give up. But as we said earlier, the secret is that if that kind of attack or that kind of system of that kind of scenario interests you, keep going until your passion, your energy tells you to keep going. Of course, maybe you will spend 100 hours of that edge case and you will not make a dime out of that 100 hours, but you gain a lot of knowledge. And this is not compliant with the bug bounty approach. This is more a researcher approach,
Mm,
and that's all about. I consider
yeah.
myself more a researcher than a bounty hunter. I did for a really short period of time, made some money, made some good connection, but like I then I decided that it was not a good fit for me, and I believe for many other people it is not.
Since we are talking about money, I mean, it's not really a question, but I just want to know your opinion about black hats. Obviously, they do have the skill set, and they are. Do you think they are doing it for the money, or there is something deeper going on with black hats or even gray hats, cyber criminals, if you ask me?
Wow, that's a very good question, because like theoretically with that skill set, like I don't know how much money a black hat can do, but with that skill set you can make very nice amount of return, even of on the white market, just providing services to companies. So probably sometimes there is something more. There is something more, something deeper, like you said, something more ideological, I would say, about behaving that way. Because it's also true that on the other side, companies are not always good in their practices. So
Yeah.
many companies do not protect data as they should, and they don't care until someone really until becomes an issue for them. So many companies
Mm.
that doesn't care about data or security of the users because of goodwilling. They care because of the regulation of the or if someone like threats them, they start taking actions. There is this very joke, very common joke that after a data breach, the cybersecurity budget skyrockets, and that but it's a joke, but it's also true. So maybe there is something related to that in the blackout world. I really don't know.
Now I think about it, it can be one of the reasons. I mean, there is a whole show about it, Mr. Robot. There, it's all about bringing down a evil
Yeah,
company. So it's
yeah,
more ideological.
yeah.
And in one of the series, he actually,
That's
yeah,
a good show. I've seen that, of course.
yeah. And do you remember this? The first episode, the pilot episode, when he's trying to bring some guy down who who has a pornography website, a child pornography website, and when he says that, "What do you want? Do you want money?" And Elliot says, "No, I don't give a fuck about money." So
Yeah,
it's more about, yeah, that ideological
it's a mission. Yeah, it's a mission.
practices.
And the sad truth is that if you want to play as a hacker within the legal boundaries, it's difficult to pursue your mission because, like, the legal boundaries are different country by country. So even notifying a company of a security issue that you found in a white hat manner sometimes gets you in trouble. And like this is happened not to me, but I've read more than one story of people getting in trouble for doing good. So that's
Yeah, the
also a
rules
thing.
are very different. Yeah, the rules are very different. Yes, yes. I mean, you can get offered a job, or you can go to prison if you are,
Yeah.
hacking into some company. Hey, by the way, speaking of ethically hacking into companies, I remember that you have a project for submitting vulnerabilities responsibly to companies. Can you talk about that a little bit? So, if someone who is interested in, you know, responsibly disclosing a vulnerability about a company, so they can reach out to you. I remember a project I saw on your website.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that project, of course, as every project, comes from a real need from a story, and that was me accidentally hacking into a huge supermarket chain while I was buying the groceries. I noticed it that there was a broken access control that was allowing me to access all these customer data, and it was really a huge database. I believe 500,000 records of people with all their PII, personal identifiable information, all their orders. And it was COVID period, and they used to write in the notes when they were doing groceries online, hey, leave the groceries outside because I have COVID. So that was also some medical information disclosure. That was really bad. So I noticed this because I was also a customer of this company. So I was testing again my own data, and I was scared of notifying the company because when you go against this huge corporation, you never know who picks up the email, if they answer you, if they ignore you. I was a little bit scared, I have to say, but at the same time I couldn't ignore this bug because there were like we were talking about 500,000 records at least, because I figured I couldn't explore the database to not break the rule, but I was seeing my own ID and the IDs were sequential. So it was at least 500,000 people. And then I end up notifying the company. The company was okay. They thanked me a lot. They even give me little bit of money. And that was the trigger that gave me the idea of this platform, which is called OpenCert, and it stands for Open Cyber Institute Response Team, which is still a beta because like I'm still figuring out the future for this platform. But the idea is to having a proxy. So as an hacker, or even if as a normal person, normal citizen, you notice that something is not okay with the security of a company, instead of notifying directly the company, you notify through this proxy which provides a layer of privacy. So we acquire the vulnerability even in an anonymous way, and then we responsibly disclose with a well studied and well architected protocol to the final company. So it was a way to
Totally.
offer researchers like me peace of mind and the freedom to notify companies who don't have a proper channel, which is, in my opinion, 19
Mm.
plus percent of the companies around the world.
Yeah, basically companies that do not have a bug bounty program.
Yes, or a vulnerability disclosure program.
Yeah, so let's say if I report a vulnerability to you and then you are going to reach out to the company and my identity is protected, right?
Yes, yes. That is the idea. I'm working with lawyers because, like, I'm trying to understand if there are scenarios where companies can force me to disclose. But the idea is that you could even report to me anonymously.
No, absolutely. It's actually a good course, and I'm going to post about it on my Instagram too. And if the people who are listening to the podcast, if you want to research about the project, I will give you the link to Francesco's website in the description. And by the way, Francesco, it was an amazing conversation. For people listening to us, if they want to reach out to you, how they can reach out to you if they want to know something or if they just want to know about your projects.
Well, like on my website, francescocarlucci.com, there are my social network linked. And but I'm not very like reliable answering on social networks. So the best way is always my email. If it's something like more they really want an answer for me. If they write me in email, they I get back 100% to everybody. If they just want to connect for an informal chat, no rush. Twitter, Instagram are perfect.
We can bring you on a different episode because the amount of knowledge that you have, you cannot just sum it up in one episode. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I will keep in touch and we can wrap it up. It was
Yeah.
a really good experience. Do you have any advice for me to become better at interviewing people? If you have any some feedback or something for me.
Well, first of all, it was really an amazing talk, and I see that 1 hour passed by like in a second. And like, I'm a podcast listener. This is my
Yeah,
first episode as a like uh, as a guest, but I listen a lot of podcasts, and I gotta say that wow, it was a really good experience, and I enjoyed this talk. It was like talking to a friend. And yeah, I like this format, this really like open and relaxed way of talking, because I believe that being at your ease can really allow you to put out the best things that come to your mind, and just keep going.
yeah. Even I believe that when you are not so perfect, people can actually relate to you, and it's happening so much on Instagram because I come from my Instagram influencer world. And it's happening too much on Instagram that everyone is like, I am so perfect, I'm so perfect. And you cannot relate with that. But if you can make it relatable for people who are listening to you, they can feel like these are two guys talking about hacking and security. I can relate with them, right? So
Yeah,
that's why I kept this more of a conversational style. But
absolutely,
you really
absolutely.
made my job easier.